this beautiful country of ours called Guyana. And Guyana, it is time to enter room 592 where we unleash the truth with Dr. Yog Mahadeo alongside his co-host, senior journalist of Kaieteur News, Mr. Leonard Gildarie. And this evening, their esteemed guests, O.C. Rogers and Joe Hamilton. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Mr. Kevin Smith. Joe, can you mute your mic, please? Good evening, Mr. Kevin Smith. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to Mr. Joe Hamilton, Mr. Austin Rogers, and of course to my co-host, Mr. Leonard Gildarie. Ladies and gentlemen, right across this country, this beautiful country of ours, wherever you're joining us from, as well as coming from the United States, Canada, UK, the Caribbean, and elsewhere, welcome to room 592, where we unleash the truth. And I think Uncle Joe's dog is behaving a little badly there. And so we are going to get Uncle Joe on the screen just now in a minute, ladies and gentlemen. But let me say to you tonight, it is with great sadness that we acknowledge the departure from this world of a great man, Mr. Owen Arthur, who, as we know, has withstood many attacks in his personality, stood up for his people as the longest serving prime minister of his country. And Mr. Owen Arthur, his last fight before departing this earthly life would have been a fight for democracy for Guyana and Guyanese. So ladies and gentlemen, it is with a great degree of respect and a little degree of remorse and sadness that we say goodbye to Mr. Owen Arthur, a fine gentleman, a patriot, statesman, and an outspoken, passionate personality for regional integration. So I just wanted to spend those moments to say our goodbye to that great statesman, and certainly we are looking forward to featuring him sometime in the near future in room 592. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say again to you all, welcome to this room 592, where we unleash the truth. Mr. Leonard Gildarie, how are you tonight, sir?
Pretty good, pretty good. As you were given those accolades, a good night to our good guest tonight. As you were given those accolades to Mr. Owen Hart, I recalled so vividly when he was here a couple of days back. I would say a couple of days back because it's all very fresh in my mind. And we were ribbing each other about the pepper pot, and I was telling him that our pepper pot is better than yours, and it's even better than your flying fish. And so he was there. I think he was very upset that I told him about his flying fish. But of course, I think we would be in a shock because I think even at this last moment that he was all ready for fire to stand up for the people of Guyana and of course the Caribbean. There's so much input that he would have made over the years. I could not help that. A big loss.
Indeed, a big loss for not just Guyana, but the entire Caribbean. And ladies and gentlemen, you would recall that when we had Mr. Owen Arthur in our elections watch, he had spoken quite sharply about his views for a number of things, including his continued vision for regional integration and his views of what would have been, the removal of the rights of people to their votes, the basic rights of the ballot and stuff like that. And you know what, Leonard? I think Guyanese will remember for a long time. Guyanese are certainly going to remember for a very, very long time the fact that Mr. Owen Arthur would have taken his badge, if we recall that day in GCOM when he met with the Foreign Affairs Minister, would have taken out his badge in absolute disgust and say, here it is, you can take it back. So Leonard, he certainly stood up and he stood out in his fight and his representation of people, even, and I think Sir Raul Gonzalez said it well, that his last fight, his last battle was one in which he stood up for the Guyanese people. And so hats off to that gentleman again, ladies and gentlemen. And Leonard, thank you for bringing him on to Elections Watch, sir.
No, it was a pleasure with him here, and it contains Sir James and the likes and the rest of them. I think we're all in a better place because of the contributions of these men, whether you like the politics or not, whether you agree with them or not. It's always a good thing to listen to former statesmen making the input, telling you a little bit history and the relationships and so on between the different countries. The world has become a bit smaller now, or a lot smaller because of the internet and social media and so on. So I think it is all good in terms of development for a good country.
Right. And so, ladies and gentlemen, let's get on with our discussion for tonight then. Just before I go over to Mr. Joe Hamilton, Mr. Joe Hamilton, sir, tonight we need to talk about lapsus linguae. You know, that slip of the tongue is no fault of the man. And so we want to talk a little bit about that and your years having been in politics, sir, against the backdrop of, you know, the former prime minister that would have advised his younger brother to put aside the constitution, and then today or yesterday saying it was lapsus linguae. Ladies and gentlemen, we learn every day. And Mr. Hamilton Green, sir, you continue to be a friend to room 592. And, you know, we have heard your phrase lapsus linguae, and we certainly have learned from it. But before I get to Mr. Joe Hamilton, ladies and gentlemen, there is another matter that I just want to quickly address. And that is, there is a gentleman on your screen, Mr. Winston Rogers, that we call O.C. Rogers or Aussie Rogers. Mr. Aussie Rogers, as you know, ladies and gentlemen, or if you may not know, let me tell you now, he is a Guyanese. He has been here all his years, up to recently when he would have migrated to the USA. And so he is not a revokee. He is not a deportee. He is not a comebackee. He has been there in Guyanese politics for a long time, giving his voice where it is needed. And Aussie Rogers, on behalf of your Guyanese brothers and sisters, I want to congratulate you, sir, for taking that stance you did. Mr. Rogers did a one-man stand-up in Philadelphia, I believe it was, where the Secretary of State was giving a speech. And so he stood there to thank the Secretary of State for his stance on Guyana and in announcing the sanctions upon the Guyanese, those people who are thwarting the will of the electorate. And he has also engineered, created, if you will, and has gotten already a lot of signatures for a petition that he is also delivering to the U.S. government, calling for their continuous vigilance over the state of affairs in Guyana. So, Ozzy, I want to come to you first, my brother, and telling you congratulations for your hard work there. What can you tell us, sir, with regards to the petition that you have been working hard on and on the current state of play with regards to your approach to the U.S. government there, sir?
All right, well, Brother Yog, thank you very much for inviting me on your show. My colleague, Mr. Gildarie, thank you very much. My brother, Mr. Joe Hamilton, it's good to see you and good to share this panel with you. And so thank you, guys. On my own behalf, and on behalf of all Guyanese who believe in truth, justice, fairness, righteousness, and Caribbean integration, I'd like to express my heartfelt condolences to Mr. Owen Arthur, his family, and the people of Barbados, and the people of the Caribbean on this loss of our Caribbean brother. That being said, Brother Yob, yes, I have started working on a petition that I plan to deliver to the U.S. government via the State Department for them to take a closer look at Guyana and for the United States government to up the ante as it relates to the organization that is currently holding our Guyanese people hostage and is currently allowing all Guyanese, every skin color, to continue to suffer, not only because of the the disgracing situation that we are at presently with the elections, but also because of COVID-19, Guyanese are suffering. And I know that I'm not alone when I say that there are tons and tons of Guyanese here in the diaspora, that we are feeling the pain of our Guyanese brothers and sisters. You could take us out of Guyana, but you can't take Guyana out of us. I'm married to a American woman, and she asks me from time to time, like, you live here now? But I keep telling her that you can't take that Guyana out of me, and I will continue to fly the flag of Guyana high and be proud that I was born in that country, and I will not stop at nothing until our people are free and until the will of the Guyanese electorate is respected, and that is what drives me, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed, that is patriotism to its core, where, regardless of where we are, and we know this is true for all of our Guyanese brothers and sisters, wherever they are living, that we may be removed from Guyana, but you cannot remove Guyana from anyone. Everybody remains true to these Guyanese mentality, the Guyanese thoughts, and in tune to the Guyanese politics, regardless of which side of the divide they are on. People become very passionate. Mr. Joe Hamilton, sir, as we talk about the Guyanese divide, sir, you're a man that has known both sides of the divide. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joe Hamilton sits here with distinction of having, and I say this with respect to him, not many persons could sit here and say they know the mentality, they know the thinking, they know the modus operandi of all sides in the political spectrum. Mr. Joe Hamilton would have been a part of the executive of the PNC many, many years ago when he was a little boy. And now that he is a grown-up man, he is now a full-fledged member of the People's Progressive Party Civic. And he sits and has sat in Parliament for a number of years on the benches of the People's Progressive Party Civic. Mr. Hamilton, welcome to room 592. This your second outing in our room, sir. Please unmute. Please unmute. Still can't hear you. You need to unmute.
Yes, yo, good evening. Sorry about that. And Leonard.
Good evening.
Good evening. And Ozzy, I haven't seen you in the flesh for a long time, but I pay attention to the work you are doing in North America. Thank you very much for the work you're doing on behalf of the people of Guyana. Let me start off. I know one of the things that we have presently people are focusing on is, of course, the comments by Hamilton Green.
Lapsus linguae.
Advising his young brother what to do with the Constitution and the laws of Guyana. And when you look at the present statement from this gentleman, you have to go back and look at his history, his story. What is his story? A man who has been in politics for over 60 years, and he will proudly say that to you. And when we examine what has he done with 60, 65 years of being involved in Guyana politics, that is the fundamental question here. I can say, and Leonard would know, Yog would know, the Guyanese people would know. If we look at a citizen, Glenn Lal, I just want to juxtapose that against a man in government. Citizen Glenn Lal, in 25 years, has created the Kaieteur News and now the Kaieteur Radio. And that is a beacon to the Guyanese people. And this is not in political life. The point I'm trying to raise is a man in government and in politics for over 60 years The question is, what has he built? What has he developed? What could you put his name to say this is his contribution to the welfare and development of the Guyanese people? When you hear Hamilton Green, what comes to mind is not development. It is rig elections, thuggery, violence, accusation, the notoriety of the accusation and allegation of being involved in the death of 2 cabinet ministers of his government. So that is his CV, you know. So for me, I am not shocked when I hear Hamilton Green advising Granger in that regard. And now we attempt to suggest that it was a slip of his tongue. Now, Yogan, you know, you're a religious man, you know that they says that it is what comes out of your mouth defile you. And it says also thoughts breed words and words breed actions. So many of the things, if not all of the things we say, it is some way revolving in our heads there, and whether it's good or bad. And therefore, it wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was the way he feel, the way he believe things should play out, and how Granger should deal with the situation. But the question is, what is sad is not even recognizing that this is not 1970s and 1980s. We are living in 2020, in the 21st century. And that is sad about all of these guys. They're of the view that they can bully and they can attempt to steal government and elections. And all we would do, Yog, Leonard, and Ozzy, and all of us, and all the generation after me, they would just go home and cower and mope, not understanding it's a different time. It's a different place. A young man who is 30 years old, he came into this world after 1992, and what he is accustomed to is freedom. To do what he wants to do, to say what he wants to say. And he will not give up that. He will fight to protect it. That is the reality of this country. And that is the reason why you see, and Leonard, you're in the media, you would know more than I do. Young people, young professionals, doctors who will lay aside their profession, lawyers who will lay aside their profession and earning for 30 odd days. And they get up early in the morning and they went to the convention center because they recognize that this is bigger than the money that I could have earned over the period. That is why business people, you know, someone lay aside their business operations and they get involved to make a contribution to this fight, to this struggle, because of the recognition that we're not going back to where our parents and grandparents told us this country once was.
Right.
And that is a fundamental issue here. And for those guys at Congress Place and wherever they are, I suspect they underestimated the resolve and the thinking of the Guyanese people. And so they're in a place where they don't know what to do. That is the place they are at.
So Joe, I wanna bring your attention to some, you know, something interesting has, a lot of interesting things you have said there. Something interesting is coming out here. David Granger, Joe Harmon, Moses Nagamotu. And with respect, you and you know, a number of persons like yourself, sir. you guys would have all emerged out of the politics, shaped by the politics of the 1970s, 1980s, and directly you were beaten into shape by the anvil and hammer of those times. How is it that Mr. Joe Hamilton could see politics and see the world with this view, whereas persons who were your comrades and even Moses Nagamoto from the PPP side is now on that side, that are seeing it so differently that it is now a discussion of people are calling on Granger to put aside the Constitution. How is it that we have come this full circle of wanting to go back to the 1970s and discard Constitution and everything, sir?
Because for me, you know, I can briefly lay out my history, and some is already known. I grew up in a PNC house. My grandparents were PNC. I can say to you and to your viewers, many people would hear this for the first time. I acquired a PNC scholarship to go to secondary school. Because in those days, once you didn't make QC or bishops, you had to pay to go to secondary school. And so I'm trying to show you how close my family would have been to the People's National Congress, that the fact that of 5 persons that year in 1966 who got PNC scholarship, I was one of those persons. Subsequently, by the age of 25, I had the thoughts about Black liberation and all the other things, and I participated in activities then as a member of the House of Israel that I have laid out before the public and the people 3 days in the box at the Rodney Commission of Inquiry. So that people.
Let me pause. But isn't Black liberation and evolution and whatever as it is, isn't it still important to Joe Hamilton? It must still be important to you.
Yes, it is still important to me, but it is important when it is justiciable. It is not important when it is promulgated from the thought process of racial domination and racism. So yes, I am what I am. I'm a child of the African generation that came here as slaves. And no denying, I have strong beliefs about African Afro-Guyanese development. But in the context...
I think you have said something there, Joe Hamilton. I mean, Leonard, Mr. Hamilton has said something there that I think the country should take note of. Whatever race we belong to, Ozzy, whatever races we belong to, we must pursue our rights based on what is justiciable and not necessarily for the sake of domination. It is not about superiority or inferiority. And Joe, just hold 1 minute. Ozzy, what are your thoughts on what? Because Joe just made, I believe, a very profound statement about how we view and evaluate our rights as a people. And it must go with the rights of everyone else.
Well, for me, Yog, I am pro-Guyanese. I see Guyana before I see my skin color. Because like I said before, I believe that Guyana is a beautiful basket, a diverse basket, woven together with people of different colors, different threads of different colors. And once we were woven together, you have a different thread color than myself and Mr. Hamilton. And once we were woven together, we create this strong cloth that is called Guyana. And once we stick together, we're unbreakable. And that is what I believe in. I am advancing. I'm going to use a new word here because we seem to be learning words as we go along in this election cycle. Guyanesism. That's what I'm advancing. And that is my interest. I believe in a Guyana where every single race is important to the development of Guyana. I know that Mr. Hamilton meant that even though he's advanced, it was not advancing, but I do understand what he's saying. And I am with him with that, because we have to also have Afro-Guyanese brothers to go back and to teach our Afro-Guyanese friends that it's not about Afro-Guyanese domination in Guyana. We all have an equal right to the Guyana pie. And we must have Afro-Guyanese brothers like Mr. Hamilton and others who are engaged in that conversation to ensure that our Guyanese brothers understand that, listen, at this Guyana head table, all are welcome and all are equal. The party that is in power, however, does not believe that based on its history and its current doctrine. They believe, and they have been advancing, a Afro-Guyanese domination, which cannot work. It will never work. We, Guyana, is at our strongest when we are united, when every single Guyanese feels as though they have an equal right to the Guyana pie. And that is the part where I'm gonna continue to teach, where I'm gonna continue to advocate. I'm advocating Guyana, Guyanese, every single one of us, myself, Mr. Hamilton, Yog Mahadeo, Leonard Gildarie, Lennox Schumann, because I want to include our Amerindian brothers and sisters into this. Every single Guyanese have an equal right at the Guyana head table, and every single Guyanese must be respected equally at the head table. And that is what I'm advancing.
Right. So, Joe, I want to come back to you because, it is true what you said there. Guyanese brothers and sisters, I think throughout our history, many times we seem to be subsuming certain values. I don't think it is good for any, whether you call it race or culture or religion or whatever, it is not good for anybody to subsume their ancestry into anything else. What we do is we uphold our ancestry, we uphold our values, but at the same time, it is not upholding to be superior, right? So it is upholding to live equal with.
Yes, and you're upholding your ancestry should not be to oppress.
Yes.
And I am saying these things because, there was a time when I viewed the PNC in the Barnum days as I have to support them, even though I recognize that it was a dictatorship oppressing people. I thought because our foreparents came on the same slave ship, it was my duty. Of course, I was 25 years old at that time. With time and circumstances and operating in the leadership of the People's National Congress, there is that recognition that this folly that many people still believe, because a person looked like me in government, he would take care of my interests. I think that is the fundamental issue. And my experience has been that I know many people looking like me who have not done anything for people looking like me, who have had the political power, who have had the authority to do. In the case of the People's Progressive Party Civic, is the view of when you emancipate yourself to recognize that is the program and the policy. It is not the ethnic origin. Benefit will only come, can only come, development would only come via the program and policy, and not ethnic origin. And I have had, I don't have the time to speak about some of the experiences with many of the people today who want to take us into a dictatorship, that they don't care a damn about black people. They care not about no people, any people. They just utilize black people for political power. That is what it is. And in the case of David Granger, what drives him, is this. He believes that, and in some of his writings, he has come close to basically saying it. Just Sunday, I think I was reading something where he believes that the people of African origin, they laid out this country called Guyana, and other people came after, and they benefited more than us. And that is the ideological concept. Lord, all the fancy language that they try to suggest, that is the foundation that the Granger cabal is built on. And that is the reason why Freddie Kissoon making a comment that it is this thought process that this 29% people of a certain race, they have a right to govern the 71%. And Granger said it in a press. You can go back, Leonard, you can go back in 2015 speaking to a political rally in Linden when he said we were born to rule, we were born to govern. That is divine right. So that is what is playing out here, where people think they have divine right to rule and to govern us. Secondly,
so that in that regard, let me ask you this then, because as you know, I mean, I don't want this to become a discussion about races, because it is something that we want to preserve. Discussion on the race maybe for some well-crafted out sessions when we can have a number of persons joining. But Joe, you have been part of the PPPC for a number of years, and I rather suspect it is from the civic component rather than the PPP component. Correct me if I'm wrong. But
yes.
But Joe, you and I mean, with due respect, I say this: you have yourself, you have persons from Amerindian ancestry, you have persons from Indo-Guyanese ancestry, you have persons from Afro-Guyanese ancestry, and so forth, all in the PPP. Mr. Joe Hamilton, since joining, even go back to a couple of years when you first joined the PPP, sir, were you at any time dealt any such language or attitudes that made you feel in any way put in any racist corner by any of the PPP persons, leadership people there?
No, not at all. And to tell you, we have frank and fearless conversation. And that is why, for me, I had no difficulty. But in 2011, I had to make a choice. And I chose to support Donald Ramotar and not David Granger, because my assessment of David Granger is just what he has become, what he is. That is the point, you know. And I say this to people: when a man says to you that his idol and his mentor is Burnham, what else you expect him to be? That is what I am confused by intelligent people now recognizing that Granger is this. This man laid out himself before the country in 2011. He said that Burnham ideology is still relevant. Burnham, he didn't say Mandela is his hero, you know, or Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi. You understand the point is? And that is why, for me, it was an easy choice for me to make to support Donald Ramotar and the People's Progressive Party, simply because under no circumstances would I have supported David Granger. And my decision is borne out with time. And so we have a situation, and what Yog makes our condition and situation tragic at the moment is that I believe fundamentally that David Granger is mentally unstable. I believe so. Because if you follow, he's not on this earth when things are happening that are earthly things, and he's somewhere else. So I don't, and you know, I say this to you, I said it the other night. I made some comments first time to the public that I have never made. It is not the first time a PNC leader has found himself in a place like this. Desmond Hoyt in 1997-98, he found himself in a place like this, yo. I was there, I was in the room, I can speak first-hand knowledge. And because he had the political experience, because he had political relationship, because he intellectually superior to David Grange, and because he was psychologically stable, when he reached the road down, he set out to make Guyana ungovernable because he hated Janet Jagan with a perfect hate. And when after he completed that, he was being egged on to conclude it. And the conclusion would have only mean a coup. That is the conclusion. And I was in the room there when he, Desmond Hoyt, said to people who were seeking to goad him on and stoke his ego that I don't want on my CV Desmond Hoyt, the coup leader. You understand? It's recognized. So yeah. And that is what, and therefore he set out to put in place a mechanism to bring it to an end. Utilizing the three wise men, if you recall all of that. This was a process of a leader taking his party to a place. The same contestation about rigged elections. And elections that PPP won by 60,000 votes. PPP acquired 36 seats, I think, at that time, against PNC 25 and their small parties 4. You understand? And there was still contestation that the elections were. So I'm saying to you, Desmond Hoyt was able to take himself out of there. Granger don't have that type of leadership quality, and that is the reason why we're here.
And you took us back to the Desmond Hoyt era, and you know, I'm mindful. Ozzy told me today and reminded me, and you remember that time when Desmond Hoyt, I believe, made a valiant effort to cross the divides, because Hoyt would have probably inherited, well, not probably, inherited the Burnham era, and so it was deemed to be, of one particular political view. And I think the Burnham's persons who did not agree with Hoyt's methodology started to call him Desmond Passad. Ozzy, you remember that?
I do remember, and but it goes back to show that since the PNC in its history has not embraced social cohesion, because he could have still been Desmond Hoyt looking out for Guyanese, but because there were people within the PNC who believed in Afro domination, and that Desmond Hoyt should not be doing anything, whether directly or indirectly, that was advancing our Indo brothers and sisters, advancing them economically or anything else. There were people in the PNC who believed that that should not have been happening. It should be pro-Black. Only Blacks should be getting ahead. So because Desmond Hoyt's policy seemed to be assisting others to advance economically, they call him Desmond Passad. That in itself, my friend, shows the racist side of the vast majority of the people within the PNC. It's that simple.
So Joe, you want to comment on that same point? Because where would Joe Hamilton have been when Desmond Hoyt was being called Desmond Passad? And what might have been some of the genesis?
In 1997, I was a candidate of the PNC with Hoyt. At the time the reform came on board and that kind of thing, PNCR. And I'm saying to you that one of the things is, because of those conversations, I think Hoyt felt that he was betrayed by Indian people. I think that was one of the things that drove him to make some statements and even take some positions that were very radical after the 97 elections, because there were two things. One, I believe he did enough to be elected across race, and therefore he had his difficulty. And of course, I mentioned he had his difficulty with Janet Jagan, I suspect, because this was a white woman, and the whole conversation from the people around him about taking us back, the same type of conversation, taking us back to colonialism. You hear the same conversation today when the ABC and EN speak. And that is what stimulate a lot of Black people in this country, that kind of conversation. And I'm saying it does this country no good. Yeah, because as Ozzy said earlier, we are Guyanese.
Yeah, and Joe, on that point, isn't it true then, Ozzy and Joe, and anytime any leader, I don't care what race they are, if they are going to call on a particular set of persons of ethnic thinking, you're doing two things. One is that you're building your own support, but two is that you're chasing others away, because you suddenly become conscious of one paradigm and therefore you're chasing others away. And I think by and large, that would have been one of the great downfalls of the Burnham days, Joe, because it would have been seen to be one-sided. And then when people like Rodney and the continued work of Jagan and so forth, they would have shown the population, well, you know, we all got to get together and fight against this because nobody's advancing. And bring that right down to 2015 through 2020 now. I dare say that the good life promised by the APNO AFC was just a good life for a handful of persons and not for the population and not for the supporters. But Joe, my question is, what then in Joe Hamilton's mind and Ozzy Rogers' mind still enthuse the followers of the APNO AFC currently? What still gets them going the way they are going?
Let me start off by saying this, Yo. When you set out to deliberately and consciously and with develop a multi-ethnic strand of politics and party, first thing you do is say it to the public. And you have to compliment Barry Jagdeo for saying this publicly. Listen, I will set out to have the PPP look like Guyana. He has said that publicly. And I have been on the journey. And I can say without fear of contradiction, he has done everything possible over the last 5 years to ensure that that vision, that dream that he has, that it succeed. And any objective person looking at the PVP in 2015 and in 2020, they would recognize that there is a transformation of this political entity they call PVP, both for ethnic origin and class and professional type and whatever, because it was a deliberate strategy to say that, and as I said, he said it publicly. He recognized it, that we have to change. He said, my vision is to change the face of the People's Progressive Party civic. And he didn't, say it, and he committed to it, and he did everything possible. And today, because of that, we were able to go into communities that the PPP had great difficulty in decades traversing. We were able to go there, share handbills and to share manifesto. And one of the things that we have to pay attention to, and that is what shocked APNU to daylight, that the PPP in Region 4 increased its vote, our votes by 11,000.
Correct.
From
Well,
69,000 to 80,000.
you
When
mentioned,
APNU only increased their vote by 1,500.
but
And
that
that
is
should inform us.
another very important point, because a lot of times, especially over these 140 days, a lot of persons seem to conveniently forget that the PNC cannot win an election with just Afro-Guyanese support. They need other support. And a lot of people are conveniently forgetting that the PPP cannot win an election with just the Indo-Guyanese vote. You need other races to vote for you. So the notion of an ethnic strength is diluting maybe with every passing day. Ozzy, I want to come to you first on this one. How then do we move off of this pedestal of race preaching, Ozzy? Because there are persons who believe that the APNU AFC did not lose this election. They believe the narrative that's being peddled to them. They believe that, you know, their numbers are superior and that they have won these elections. They refuse to look back at the LGE results. They refuse to look at the slim margin of 4,000 votes by which they won the 2015 elections. And they just think that they have a 30,000, 40,000 superior number of voters.
My brother, the PNC does believe that it could win any elections based on the minority support that it has. Because the PNC knows that it has people in place, magicians in place, that can fix numbers for them. We've seen it. Mingo has attempted to alter the numbers in favor of the PNC, and Lowenfield has fraudulently presented numbers to the commission of which he is employed to alter numbers in favor of the PNC. So it is in the back of the PNC's mind, also based on its history, because history would show that the PNC has never won an election in Guyana, but they were declared winners all the time up until 1992. So while they do not have the numbers to win an election, they have the people who do not act with integrity and decency to fix the numbers on their behalf. So they're confident in that. However, they were operating in their 1970s mode in their head because majority of the leaders of the PNC failed to grow with the times, failed to realize that we're in 2020 and not 1970. So while they're thinking 1970 in their head, they're thinking 1970 rigged election tactics also. Cannot work in the 21st century. That is why they were caught and exposed at every single level, as opposed to all the other elections that they rigged.
Mm-hmm. And with that, Joe, in hindsight, given that it was, correct me if I'm wrong, Leonard, but I believe based on videos I'm seeing, it was Mr. Lowenfield that made the final release to the press of the numbers at the 2015 elections. Joe, in hindsight, given all the shenanigans that have been exposed, do you still believe that the numbers issued for the 2015 elections are therefore sacrosanct?
Yog, let me say this. Let me say this. 2015, what happened is the PNC deliberately created all kind of ruckus at polling stations to expunge our polling agents and allow themselves in communities in South Georgetown to vote out lists in collaboration with people who were working with GCOM. Remember, in 2015, all the tabulation was done at GCOM headquarters under the auspices of the chief elections officer, breaking the law. Because the law says the 10 ROs must do their declaration in their districts. And I will tell you this, a couple days before elections, when Barra Jagdeo led that delegation to reach the commission, two fundamental things he argued for and got it. One, if you recall, they were attempting to put 7,000 people in one building at Monterey Post. That was an attempt of voter suppression. That is what a deliberate attempt of voter suppression. We were able to get them to change and to put tents and whatever. And the other important thing he got the commission to agree to, that the elections of 2020, all the districts RO would declare their results in the districts. That is what throw the rigging attempt and plan upside down. Because by the 3rd, we had all the numbers of 9 regions. And everybody could have done their calculation, tabulation, accounting, whatever you want to call it. Recognizing that the PPP was ahead 52,000, that the PNC had to win by over 50,000 in Region 4. And that is why they moved into rigging stage. Because they know under no circumstances they could have gotten that $50,000 to 50,000 votes to surpass the PPP. Right. So that is what that fundamental decision that Jagdeo rested, and it was the chairperson who agreed. Lowenfield was putting up all kinds of arguments why it shouldn't happen. And Jagdeo's position was, you will get your own SOPs because the SOPs go to the ROs and it also comes to Lowenfield. And Jagdeo's position was, you're not to call the district report. You're just to have that as CEO.
Right. Well, I think a lot of the differences would be in terms of your party's, the PPPC's modus operandi has been the change in the leadership of the PPP too. Because Joe, the question, and Ozzy, this one to you, the question therefore that whether the PPP would be contemplating whether Donald Ramata really lost that election.
This is my personal view. I'm trying to focus more, or my complete focus, on the 2020 elections, because this is the consequential election. This is the elections that currently have our people in Guyana suffering. I receive calls on Facebook Messenger daily. People are crying to me. Brother Yoga, I listened to your program one day, and there was a auntie from Barbies who called and started crying.
Yeah.
On your program. It broke my heart. It broke my heart because Guyanese people are suffering. So while the time will come for us to examine our history and re-examine the 2015 and all the elections, I think that our main focus should be on the 2020 elections so we can bring it to a completion, have a president, the president-elect, duly declared and sworn in, and get on the ball of helping our people. Our people are suffering, Brother Yog. We hear it every day. You hear it every day. I could sense how the passion, when you spoke, when that auntie spoke afterwards, I could sense, I've never seen you so worked up on air.
Right, yes.
This is because you feel the pain of our people in every single region and every single color, every single ethnicity. So this is why we need to keep the focus primarily directly on the 2020 elections and ensure that David Granger and others in the terrorist organization that he manages understand that they cannot hold our people ransom forever. And we, the Guyanese people, have a strong resolve to ensure that the will of the people is respected. And they are Guyanese, inside and outside of Guyana, willing to go the extra mile to ensure that the will of the people and their votes is respected.
And I
Right.
thank you for that. If I may, gentlemen, good night again. I want to bring you to the statements of the Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu, who has been making statements through the Guyana Chronicle, writing in his column there. So I want to ask you if you have read it, whether you believe that that is having talks at this point in time is a backdoor attempt to enter government by the coalition. There are some people who believe that.
Which one of the statements? He's making a lot of statements.
I think in a recent column over the weekend.
Oh, the one that talks about shared governance and talks?
Yes.
Well, the position I have on that matter and the party, the People's Progressive Party Civic, we have the talks and we have the issue of governance after the declaration and a government is sworn in. I mean, the two things, one has to happen first before we can have the other. It's simple as that.
Well,
You have to have the conclusion of the elections, and then we discuss the issue of governance. I believe that this conversation now, and they have been having that conversation by different people at different times. They have been churning that out. And even when they speak about it, you could see that they're not sincere. I believe that the guys, they want to be in a government so as not to go to prison. That is what it is, I believe.
But
they want to be in a government.
Just stick a pin there. Let's talk about that, because I want to tell you something. Ladies and gentlemen, we have invited the ANOG, we have invited LJP. I've sent off an email to the Prime Minister, and I've asked the PPPC to name a representative to sit tomorrow night in room 592 to discuss this call for negotiation. So Joe, I want to come to you with something you just mentioned there. Man, you're bringing out a lot of things here tonight, and you know, it is really interesting. Joe and Ozzy, is there a likelihood that Mr. David Granger is unaware of the truth of these elections? Because he said to the public, he has not seen the SOPs. He saw a spreadsheet. Is there a likelihood that Mr. Granger is unaware? Joe, you first.
No, I don't think so at the moment. I think because of his mental state from day to day, that thought shift in his head. But I am sure that he knows that he lost the election. I suspect pride, he can't come to grip with this, Yoga. And I want to simplify these matters. Where this urban gentleman lost an elections to ordinary rural boy, you have to understand that is telling for Granger to live with. You understand me? Because if you know, and the ambassador spoke to the issue of sanctimonious. Sanctimonious is that you believe you're above people. And that is how he comes across. So he knows that he's aware that he lost the election. I want to believe.
And is he aware fully of everything that his party is doing? Is he?
I want to believe some of he's the architect of these things, and the execution is done by Armand and other people, but he's very much aware. Let me say this, you. Why I'm confident Granger is aware. The fact that Gaskin spoke out on this matter, it must mean that this matter was discussed in the family. I'm confident about that. And I suspect because Gaskin wasn't getting the type of traction and action, he decided that, listen, I have to go public so that the public can recognize that I'm not a participant in this. So yes, Granger is very much aware, but from day to day and time to time, he is, because of his mental state, as I have always argued, that he has some psychological condition because of how we operate over time. And that is the reason why, and Leonard, you're a senior journalist, that is the reason why they never allowed him to face the journalists over time.
But how do you?
Because
Yes.
that cognitive dissonance, you would have seen it coming out. And they are manipulating him, Armand and the crew, because they recognize he has that impediment. But he's very much aware of the results of the elections. He's very much aware that he lost the elections. I would say this. Before the recount, he might have been curious. And that is the reason why he agreed to the recount. But after the recount, he's very much aware that he lost the elections. Because after the recount, when we went into the box, you and Leonard, there is no contestation anymore. We have the physical ballots in our hand that were cast on election day, March 2nd.
But how do you marry, Joe? How do you marry that against some people? Even you, I heard a little while ago, said that he might not be in his full mental capacities, but he's coming out, speaking to the media or speaking on different forums, and very careful with his words. I will abide by the Constitution, by valid votes, and along those lines. How do you say? How does one say that maybe he knows what he is saying against mental capacity, lack of thereof?
Because everything is staged for that moment and that period, and it has a time span to it. Half hour, 20 minutes. You understand me? And so when you have schizophrenia or your severe psychosis, there are times when you're normal. But most of the times, you take fantasy and fiction and make it reality. And so that is and Armand, and they're manipulating him daily because of that recognition that of this impediment.
And
So
gentlemen,
he's not where he should be.
and gentlemen, my apologies there, sir. I want to ask you about something that has been bothering me. I'm not sure about you, but the whole issue of the deep division that has been brought about by this entire elections. How much of a damage has this elections done to the people of Guyana, the entire psyche of the people of Guyana?
Well, let me say this. As painful as it is, as tragic as it is, in my view, I believe it's a good thing for Guyana. I believe so. And I've said that this on the campaign trail, that I believe it was a good thing that the PPP lost power in 2015. That you young people, under 40 and so, I don't have to go and speak anymore of PNC, you know. You're living it. You give me less work to do. Because you are living what the PNC is. And therefore, that has emboldened and strengthened young people. And young people are confident of what kind of country they want to live in and what kind of country they would not live in. And so, yes, Leonard, it is damaging, but we will overcome all of that.
Thank you. So Ozzy, I want to take you back to that question. I'm sorry we didn't give you an opportunity to respond, but handle both of them. One is, so I laughed aloud just now because, you know, we said it on radio on elections was that, you know, we would have heard, a lot of the young people would have heard from their parents of the PNC days, of the 1970s and so forth, and rigging elections, and now you're seeing what is it about. And you said it right. You politicians don't have to go tell the people here what used to happen in the past because they're seeing it for themselves. Ozzy, over to you. And do you think Mr. David Granger is somehow or the other separate, divorced from the reality of what's happening in Guyana?
Well, my brother, if you will indulge me, I want to go back to the question that Leonard asked, because I think my position will be very different from my brother, Joe Hamilton.
Sure.
I believe, and I strongly believe, I should say, that there should be no talks with terrorists. And I refer to the PNC, APNU, AFC, I'm labeling all of them as a terrorist group. What they are putting our entire country through is nothing less than terrorism. And this party has shown its proclivity to terrorism because it was a man by the name of Abdul Kaieteur, who was a mayor of Linden, who was a member of parliament for the People's National Congress, that was charged, convicted, and jailed in the United States for terrorism. It was the same PNC that is running our country, the same group of people who use one of our sacred places where laws are made for our country to honor this terrorist. So they're guilty by association, and based on what is manifesting today, I can only refer to them as a terrorist organization. You want more evidence? It is the same political party that allowed Jim Jones to come to our soil and commit terrorist act on our soil. First time ever. All right? So I am saying again that David Grange is leading an organization that is demonstrating to the people of Guyana that it's a terrorist organization, and I make this with no fear of contradiction. It's a terrorist organization. What they're putting the Guyanese people through is nothing less than terrorism. You want more evidence? It is the same political party, the PNC, that draped Blackie Douglas, what's his name, Andrew Douglas, coffin with our sacred instrument, the golden arrowhead, the sacred instrument of statehood. So tell me that I am wrong for calling this party a terrorist organization, and a terrorist organization that is willing to destroy its own people for political gain. We just see them. They just had political rallies or meetings or whatever you call it, breaking the protocols, the COVID-19 protocols, just because they want to get their message out there. They don't care anything about the health of their own people. Isn't that a terrorist organization, my brother? Tell me.
So, Ozzy, do you think that David Grange is fully aware of what's going on?
I think so. But the difference between we have a similar situation as working out that worked out in 1992 when Desmond Hoyt was cornered and wanted to do the honorable thing as the leader of his party. And there were those like Mr. Hamilton Green who said to him that you cannot do that. You should not give up power. And Hamilton Green, Desmond Hoyt had to get rid of Hamilton Green, hence the forming of the Good and Green Guyana. They had to get rid of him because they had this big rift in the PNC because Desmond Hoyt wanted to do the right thing and the honorable thing by conceding that he lost the elections. Hamilton Green and the thugs said never. So they had a splitting of the party. However, Desmond Hoyt, say whatever you want to say about him, at least he had a little bit of integrity and he put Guyana first. That's the difference between Desmond Hoyt and the leader of this terrorist the current leader of this terrorist organization, David Granger, because he don't care anything. So he's listening to Hamilton Green. What Hamilton Green said there the other day on Mark Benchcop show, it is not whatever the fancy word, the fancy statement he used. It is a product of his thinking all the years. But the difference is, throughout the years prior to this time, when he said it, no one took him up on it. Whether it was fear of taking him up on it prior to 1992, fear that you might wind up dead, fear that they might take you out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean in a helicopter, fear of victimization, you might have to run to Suriname and other places. Whatever it was, people never was able to take up Hamilton Green on these things. So he was able to say these things and get away with it, unlike 2020, because the spirit of the Guyanese people transcends race. And we are all resolved in calling out this PNC dictatorship, terrorist cabal, and we are willing to lay our lives down to ensure that our country is free.
Right.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you
that.
for that. And ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you all that you can continue you can relook at our shows by going on the Kaieteur Radio Facebook page or on our, so far it is temporary YouTube channel. You can click on the link to join us live there. You are getting us. I know we are receiving messages from viewers, from listeners in Linden, in Pomeroon, in Cariveton, all over the place. People are listening on 99.1 FM, 99.5 FM. So we are live on radio, and we know that a number of television stations are also broadcasting this as we speak. So ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to insert that this program comes to you. And let me say this to you, this is all voluntary work that is being done. Yours truly, I do not belong to any political organization, and this is just purely voluntary because we need, as Ossie Rogers said, to put Guyana first, and we really need to do it now. It's now or never. Joe, you asserted to this earlier, and I found your statements, as I said, very pragmatic, thought-provoking. Joe, you said earlier that one of the problems here is not just race, it is class. When you alluded to, little boy, versus a big man kind of thing going for presidency, but there's more to it. One would recall in the past that the PNC could not have tolerated the idea of a little boy, Barajagde, who didn't go to the schools that they went to. And I think that is part of the class problem presently, that one man went to a particular school that others could not have gone to. And so there's a class problem. So how far-seated, how deep-seated are class problems that even seem to belie or overtake race problems in this country?
I have argued that a lot of what drives PNC politics is class. Race is caught up in it, but it's class. Because you have a situation where people who were Christianized first and urbanized, who thought that they were ordained to govern Guyana after the colonial people left. And what has happened, Yog, in the last 4 decades? We rural people, we have come and take over social space and political space and economic space. So a lot of times when you see people speaking, it's from a class perspective, but it might be that they're of a different race. But what is driving their thought process is the issue of class. And that is why I'm saying to you that fundamentally, I believe David Granger cannot wrap his head around this Judeo-Christian, urbanized officer and a gentleman going to an elections and a rural young man winning that election. I think that is playing with his mental state. Mm-hmm. And what the people of that class, they utilize ordinary people to gain political power. It's not that they care about them. They utilize them to gain political power. And so that is a fundamental that is wrapped up in the politics of our country, the issue of class. Right. And we have done, for a lot of the people, the urban people, we have done too good, But our bottom line was, growing up in the rural communities of whatever race or ethnicity, mm-hmm. we were taught by our parents, grandparents, that education will take you out of this. Wherever and whatever you were in at the time, education will take you out of this. And we adhere to that.
Yes.
And that has created new conditions. And people who have the pedigree as they see themselves, they have a difficulty with the new Guyana. They have a
Right.
difficulty
Certainly.
with,
Certainly.
with
Certainly.
that. So
And so the education and the certificates we display on the wall do not necessarily make a man, right?
right, because you know, one of the important thing is for us rural people, we have maximized our certification.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean, we have made it financially sound. You can have a certification, you know.
I want to push you back on something else. In 2015, a lot of persons, quite a sizable number of swing votes, voted. I wouldn't say that they voted for Granger, they voted against the PPP. One of the thoughts that has been emerging but has not found its way into a thesis as yet, Joe and Ozzy, has been that David Granger and team felt that these swing voters voted for them. But the actual fact was that these swing voters voted against the PPP. A vote against somebody doesn't mean we endorse you. It means we don't like what you did, and we're giving the other side, by that token, a chance. But Joe, they would have, Ozzy, sorry, you first, but they would have let that chance go, Ozzy. And in that regard, then, Ozzy, the PNC felt that it owned those votes. Was that a monumental mistake, sir?
It was indeed a monumental mistake, because I know of a lot of people who voted in protest of the People's Progressive Party. Like you rightfully said, they did not vote for, but their driving force was against, for whatever reason. There were some people, it was personal reasons. There were some people, it was like the pace was not fast enough. Every person that departed and voted for the coalition had a reason. For some people, it was the preaching of the coming together of all the races, all the parties coming together under this big umbrella called the coalition, with the expectation that there would be an advancement of our social cohesion and an advancement of the really bringing Guyana as one. Finally, that we're really going to be together as one, with David Granger leading that. And also for some people, they bought into the propaganda of the APNU AFC, because they were telling you about how much people Mahadeo got up out of his bed and went and killed, sneak out from security and stuff like that and went and killed. Some people believe that. Some people believe that, they stole all the money. Some people believe all sorts of things that was said by David Granger and his people. But what a lot of us fail to realize, we were just listening to the negatives of the PPP, but there was no speech or no plans and programs for the advancement of country.
Yeah.
But they were voted in and they were given a chance. And because they were always speaking about what the PPP did or allegedly did, that's all they continue from 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, up to the elections 2020, and all we heard about what the what the PPP did, all the negatives that they did, but nothing. Then later on, about 2 weeks before the elections, David Granger came out with a decade of achievement, a decade of development 2 weeks before the elections. But then when they failed to explain what was really in this decade of development, and what about the half decade, or what about the 4.5 years that you were in there that you did not even think about the development of the Guyanese people?
Right.
So that is why, my friends, I'm saying to you that a lot of us fall prey to the trickery of the PNC under its disguise of the APNU, AFC, And they got a chance. Like Mr. Hamilton said, it was a good thing for the nation somewhat, because I can guarantee you, I believe in my Guyanese people, and the one with the lowest level of intelligence is still Guyanese smart. And Guyanese smart is a good thing. And I believe that they are going to, at the next election, remember this day and the days since December 21st, 2018, and what the PNC has done to destroy our country, its people, and our image in the international arena.
Correct.
Thank you very much, Zir. And gentlemen, and maybe both of you guys could answer this. Do you believe that first of all, to Mr. Joe, do you believe that your former colleagues in the PNCR could probably reemerge and revitalize the PNCR after this nightmare that Guyana would have suffered for the last couple of months?
Let me say this. Who? Who? When you're looking forward, you have to be realistic and say who. Granger, step aside. What you have before you, Armand, Balder Lawrence, and Basil Williams. That's which choice would you make? Because any choice you make is the same place you're at. And that is tied in to the question Yoga asks. You have to have different strata of people to make a solid political unit. And the professional type people play a major role in everything you would attempt to do. This swing voter, as Yog spoke about, I average is about 8 to 12% of those persons. And I would answer the question, I'm answering both of you at the same time, differently to how Ozzy answered it. I believe that people really believe David Granger, that they really believe he was an honest and decent man. And they supported him because they believed he would have done the things that he said he would have done. You would note some of the most angry people who have spoken out against Granger and his cabal were persons who supported him, and they will start their conversation by saying that they supported him because they really believed in the snake oil he was selling. Many of the young people who have formed their own political entity, when you talk to them, that is how they start their conversation. Mm-hmm. And so they have lost all of those young people. If you, Leonard, we extend it to the generation after Armand and the likes, what you have there is a Chris Jones of this world and the Figueroa. That is what you have. So when you look at the PNC now and its next generation, I don't see any person who can make this unit what it used to be once upon a time. And as Ozzy has said earlier, the young people will never forget the PNC in large measure, and the people across the racial and class stratum. And as Yoke said earlier, you need all of these people to win an election.
Of course.
You need all of these people. The PP Civic recognized that, and that is the reason why the strategy and tactic was what it was. And you would see, Yog and you, Leonard, you would see how many young professional type people went out there and campaigned vigorously with the People's Progressive Party Civic, because they believe that, say what you want about the PPP Civic, they made a genuine attempt to transform their party. And that is, these people, they have not done it. They had their opportunity in government. And instead of doing better by conceding, even go back to 2018, as Ozzy said, by having a recognizing and accepting the vote of no confidence. And I say this, we would have had to pull out all the stops if Granger had gone to elections right away after the no confidence motion. They would have been a stronger competitor in the elections. But everything they did since then created conditions to give more people to look at the PVP and to make assessment and to make judgment. And the swing voters, in large measure, were able to really see Granger for what he is, a charlatan, a sanctimonious gangster, and all the other phraseologies you can utilize.
OC?
And so they're angry, I'm telling you. They say that to say that they're disappointed is an understatement.
So Joe, we are almost at program time, and so whatever you, as your speaker would have said to you, Mr. Parliamentarian, can you kindly wrap up? Yeah, you have 1 minute more.
No, the point is, is to say this. I have argued right through this process that this can only end one way: democracy winning out against dictatorship. I'm confident about that. And therefore, with all the things that are happening, I don't lose faith. Secondly, as I have said earlier, the young people know what country they want to live in, and they will not allow another type of country to develop here. And that's why they will put their time, their energies, their finances, and all their means to ensure that that happens.
Thank you.
My expectation is very urgently, the chair of GCOM will make a declaration, Irfan Ali will be sworn in, the PVP in government, and we go out there to work earnestly to give service to the Guyanese people. That is my expectation.
Thank you. And there you have it, Mr. Joe Hamilton. Democracy will always win over dictatorship. Ozzy, your closing comments, sir.
All right. So thank you very much, Leonard and Yoke, for having me on this program. It's always a pleasure being here. We are at a crossroad, our Guyanese people. And I want to, again, because it's important, draw or shed light, shine some light on the suffering of our Guyanese brothers and sisters. I want every single Guyanese to know that we are not divorced from your suffering. We in the diaspora I'm talking about, we see it, we understand it, we know it, and we are here with you. And I might be the face or one of the faces that is of this struggle here in the United States, but I'm not alone. There are tons and tons of us who understand their suffering and who are working tirelessly to ensure that democracy prevails in Guyana. The PNC has had an opportunity to show, or the PNC did show what they really are, what they're really about. And I believe that the PNC is dead and done. There's no coming back after this, because they were able to trick the Guyanese people twice, and they're not going to trick the Guyanese people a third time. So, my friends, I want to say hang in there, because justice is on its way. And one famous American said, the arc of the moral universe may be long, but it bends towards justice. And justice is on its way. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ozzy. Indeed, the arc of the moral universe may be long, but it bends towards justice. And Mr. Joe Hamilton, you know, democracy will always prevail over dictatorship. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say on your behalf, thanks to Mr. O.C. Rogers, Mr. Winston Rogers, as he is better known by his peers, but we call him with our favorite name, you know, in Creolese, we always call everybody, whatever name we know them by, so Ozzy Rogers, and of course, Mr. Joe Hamilton. It's been a pleasure to have you both here in room 592 tonight, and we look forward to further future engagement with you both, gentlemen. My co-host, Mr. Leonard Gildarie, thank you, sir, for being a gracious co-host tonight, as you are every night. And to Kevin Smith, Josh Van Slightman, Raj, and the entire Kaieteur radio crew, great job, and thank you for being there behind the scenes and doing what you have to do. One day, very soon, Leonard and I will take the controls, and you two will run this program, hopefully sooner rather than later, Leonard.
You're ambitious, man.
No, we got to train the youngsters, you know. So it's been great to have you all here, ladies and gentlemen. Let me say thanks to you all for joining us from wherever you have joined us. Do remember to have a great evening, and our regards to yourself and families. And please remember, as we say every night, do a prayer for this beautiful country of ours. It is still the best place on this God-given earth of ours. Do stay safe. Be good. Bye-bye now.
Okay, gentlemen, good night. Have a good night.